Okay, good evening. Welcome to tonight's Parsha Shiur. Hopefully 3 ideas to share this evening for Parsha Shiur. The first is actually just a story. The Parsha begins with the famous Pasuk, the Klal Yisrael getting ready to leave Mitzrayim, and the Pasuk says, "L'chol b'nei Yisrael le'echeras kelev l'shonei," that no dog barked as the Jewish people were leaving Mitzrayim, and as a reward for that, the dogs later get the trephus that a farmer may have, la kelev tashlichun. So that's the rewards for this lo yecharatz kelev l'shonei. Now, a few years ago, I came across an article in Mishpacha magazine by someone called Rabbi Eisenman. He writes a beautiful column every second week, I think it is, and he told a fabulous story which I thought was amazing, and I just thought I'd save it and put it in the freezer until Parsha Shiur at an opportune time. So now is the opportune time. So let me just share with you this remarkable story of Lo Yecharatz, which is related to the pasuk of L'chol b'nei Yisrael Lo Yecharatz kelev l'shonei. He had a person in his community. He calls him Bernie Hillstein. I think that's a changed name. He finally conceded he could no longer live alone. He wanted to enter an assisted living facility, what we called an old age home, a senior citizens home. And he'd always craved warmer weather. He found an assisted living complex in South Florida, and he hurriedly signed the lease. Only after he deposited, his deposit was cashed, did he notice the small print. And the small print said, "No pets allowed, including service animals." And when Bernie's wife of Ethel had passed away after 56 years of marriage, 6 years earlier, Bernie welcomed Oakland into his home on the advice of his doctors. Oakland was Bernie's German Shepherd Service guide dog and his constant companion. And he said without Oakland, Bernie wouldn't know how he would survive COVID. And he and Ethel did not have children. His eyesight was failing, and without Oakland in the apartment, Bernie would have suffered the terrible pain of loneliness. And he therefore came to Rabbi Eisenman's office, begging and for some form of help. Maybe they could make an exception to this, and could Rabbi Eisenman help? So Rabbi Eisenman called the CEO of the facility, and who listened to him very politely, but said that listen, the rule is a rule, and there are no pets allowed. Period. Nothing to discuss. And Bernie sadly was beside himself with grief. The thought of abandoning Oakland and of living on his own felt like a death sentence to him. So finally the exasperated CEO of this facility said, "Call Mr. Hertzler. If you call Mr. Hertzler, he owns the facility. He's the only one who could give you permission." And Mr. Hertzler was going to be in New York for a family simcha, and Rabbi Eisenman made up to meet with him on the following Sunday. And when he arrived in the house in Borough Park in New York, his expectations for success were very low, because Mr. Hertzler was a Hasidic Yid with blue numbers on his forearm. What 94-year-old Holocaust survivor would allow a German Shepherd to live as a guest in his facility? I realized, says Rabbi Eisenman, this would be a mission in futility. Mr. Hertzler was extremely hospitable, offering me kokosh cake when I came in. He explained the situation and why Bernie needed to have Oakland live with him. He stressed that Oakland was all he had in his life. Mr. Hertzler listened patiently and then responded by quoting a pasuk, "L'chol b'nei Yisrael lo yecharatz kelev l'shonei." This pasuk. Rabbi Eisenman thought that perhaps Mr. Hertzler wasn't focusing on what he had said, and therefore he repeated his plea. And this Mr. Hertzler repeated the pasuk, "L'chol b'nei Yisrael le'echaratz kelev l'shonei." Then Mr. Hertzler said the following: "I've been waiting for you for 77 years. Of course your friend can bring his dog. In fact, I will personally pay for all the dog's needs." He looked at Rabbi Eisenman and said the following: "In 1945, towards the end of the war, the Nazis were evacuating the camp. I decided to hide in a space under the barracks. The Nazis used their German shepherds to sniff out any Jews. Any time the dog smelled a Jew, it began barking. As a Nazi and his dog neared my space, I repeatedly davened with all my heart, L'chol b'nei Yisrael lo yecharatz kelev l'shonei. To my amazement, the dog passed right by me. He made no sound and kept walking. It was then that I made a promise. Just as Hashem paid back the dogs for not barking during the Yetzias Mitzrayim, one day I would pay back a German shepherd for not barking and saving my life. And now the day I've been waiting for has arrived. Your friend and his dog will be my honored guests." Rabbi Eisman said he sat there stunned. And then Mr. Herzl said, you thought you came to ask me a favor? Hashem sent you to allow me to pay a 77-year-old debt. Remarkable story. Remarkable story. Okay, so that is the first opening for tonight. A slightly unusual, different opening, but a remarkable story nonetheless. Let's go back to the sheet. This is, if you're listening online, please email me at j.golker@gmail.com. Send you the handout. So this next idea is a beautiful idea that I heard from Rabbi Hartman, who heard it from Rabbi Hutner, Rav Hutner. Parshas Boy deals with Korban Pesach and ultimately with Jewish identity. Let's take a look at the Psukim. Vayikra Moshe lechol ziknei Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu called the elders of Klal Yisrael vayom aleihem mishchu ukechu lochem tzoyin lemishpachoseichem v'shochatu al Pesach. Draw near, take an animal, and to bring it as a Korban Pesach. ולקחתם אגודס איזוי ותבלתם באדום אשר בסוף והגעתם למashkof השתי המזוז מן האדום אשר בסוף. And you've got to apply the dam on the mashkof of your house. ואובה Hashem לנגוף את מצרים, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will pass over the Mitzrayim, when he comes to punish the Mitzrayim in Makas Bechoros, v'rois Adam al mashkof, and he'll see the Jewish home, which has got the dam on it. V'ashtei hamezuzos, so pasach Hashem al Pesach, and he will pass over the Jewish home, and he won't let any destruction come down on the Jewish people. That should be an eternal statute for you. Etc., etc. And this will be a Bezavach Pesach, and you'll remember Pesach abotzim bnei Yisrael b'Mitzrayim b'nokfei es Mitzrayim b'espotenu hitzil, etc., etc. Next pasuk, Vayelchu vayasu bnei Yisrael kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe va'Aaron, that they went and the Jewish people did exactly what Moshe and Aaron told them. V'chein keinosu, keinosu. What does it mean? Keinosu. So look at Rashi underneath. Kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe va'Aaron lahagid shvachim shel Yisrael. The Klal Yisrael are praised that they didn't deviate or cut short of any of the mitzvahs that Moshe and Aaron had instructed them. Umau keinosu, the pasuk says, "Vayelchu vayasu bnei Yisrael kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe v'Aaron." Keinosu, what does that mean? Says Rashi, "Umau keinosu, af Moshe v'Aaron keinosu." That even Moshe and Aaron did it. They did it as well. Good. Ad kan, the psukim with the Rashi. 4 questions. Question number 1. Why is the pasuk telling us that Moshe and Aaron also did the Korban Pesach? I mean, they're Jewish, so they've got to do it. Does it tell us when it comes to Shabbos, when it comes to Tefillin, that Moshe and Aaron also kept Shabbos, they also kept Tefillin? So why does the Torah highlight the fact that Moshe and Aaron also did it? Keinosu, af Moshe v'Aaron keinosu. Question number 1. Question number 2, why is it that when it comes to the 10th and last plague with Makas Bechoros, Klal Yisrael put dam on the doorposts to protect themselves, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would see it and then would pass over, but with the other Makas, they were automatically protected. So it asks the Maharal this question, why specifically it comes to the 10th plague, Makas Bechoros, they needed to do something to protect themselves. But they were automatically protected in all the other Makas. That's question number 2. Question number 3, the Yontef of Pesach gets its name from this incident. Asher posach Hashem al botei Mitzrayim, al botei bnei Yisrael, that he jumped over the Jewish homes. So it's called Pesach because of this incident. But isn't this incident a mere detail in the story? You know, with other Yom Tovim, the Yontef is called after the very nature, the essence of the day. Rosh Hashanah is called Rosh Hashanah because I know exactly what that means. It is the beginning of the year. Yom Kippur is Machaper. Sukkot because we lived in booths which we commemorate, or the Annei Kavod, etc., etc. So why is Pesach so called? Just because Hashem passing over the Jewish home seems like a very small detail in a larger story. How does it capture the essence of the day? And then, fourthly, there's a famous Ramban, which we're going to go through the key extract of it at the end of the Seder. It's probably the most famous Ramban on the whole Chumash. And he says there that many mitzvahs are Zeichel Etzias Mitzrayim. And he explains that the story of Mitzrayim, all the details, are a proof against the various denials that the non-Jewish people may, or anyone may have. And that is why Zeichel Etzias Mitzrayim features so prominently in many mitzvahs. The difficulty is, one of the things that he lists there is mezuzah. That's also Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's not actually mentioned in the parashas in mezuzah. So what is it about mezuzah which is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim? What does the Ramban mean? So 4 questions. Why does the Torah tell us Moshe and Aaron also did the Korban Pesach? They kept Shabbos, they kept Tefillin as well. Number 2, why is it with the 10th plague that they needed to do something to protect themselves when there was an automatic protection in the first 9? Question number 3, why is the Yom Tov of Pesach so called? And question number 4, where in Mezuzah is Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim? Okay, let's learn this Ramban, the key points, and then we'll answer our questions. Says the Ramban, Va'ata oimelecha klal b'tam mitzvahs rabbos. It's a beautiful Ramban. He says, I'm going to now tell you a klal in many mitzvahs. Hine, me'eis heos avodas gilulim ba'olam. From the very inception of time, a generation or two after Adam Rishon, when idolatry began seeping into the world, people became confused and mistaken regarding matters of belief. Mehem koifrim be'ika, there were those who totally denied the existence of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Va'omrim ki ha'olam kadmon. They said that the world sort of came about on its own before the existence of God or any deity. Kochshu b'Hashem v'yomru lohu. They denied the existence of the Rebbeinu Shalom. They said he just doesn't exist. Umehem makishim b'yediosai haprotis v'amru eicha yedakel v'yesh der be'elyon. They denied that the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what's going on in this world. They acknowledge his existence, but they deny his divine awareness of what's going on in the world. Umehem, and there's another group, sheyoidu b'yediyah, no, he exists, and he knows what's going on, umachishim b'hashgacha, but they just deny the concept of hashgacha pratis, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can interact, the providence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The people are like the fish in the sea. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu has no supervision over them. He just lets them get on with it, and they do what they want. So 3 categories of kofrim: those that deny Hashem, those that say, okay, he exists, but he doesn't know what's going on in the world, or thirdly, he exists, he knows what's going on, but he has nothing to do with us. He just let us get on with it. Those are the 3 categories. Turning over the page, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to remind us of his existence, I'm in the top paragraph of the next page, and he does some sort of moifes, some sort of miracle, where he changes the rules of nature. Then all of a sudden, those false ideologies go out of the window. Because a remarkable moifes, a wonder and a sign, that the world has a God who is renewing the world. And he knows what's going on, and he's interacting and engaging with the world, and is able to. And when that engagement, that gezerah, that interaction is pre-warned by a prophet, that authenticates the nevuah even more. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu has spoken to mankind and has told his secrets and his forewarnings to neviim, to human beings, to prophets. And that authenticates the entire Torah. Next paragraph. That's why about the makkahs it says, in order that you should know Ki Ani Hashem b'kerev haaretz. What does that mean? Lahiris al hashgacha, i.e., that there is divine providence. Ki lo ozav oisal lemikrim kadaitom. He doesn't let it sort of fall to happenstance, to mikra, to just chance. Va'omar, and furthermore it says, Leman teda ki Hashem haaretz. Lahiris al hachidush, that Hashem created the world. Ki heim sheloi shebara me'ayin, that he created the world from nothing. Va'omar ba'avur teda ki ein kamoini b'chol haaretz, and to know there's no one like me in the whole world. Lahiris al hachidush, that he can do. Shehu shalit bakol, he's got the control to do whatever he wants. Ein ma'akev b'yod, nothing can stop him. Ki b'chol zeh hoya matzrim achishim, I mistapkin, because about all of these things, the Mitzrim either denied or were not certain about. Imkain, ha'osis v'hamosim ha'gedolim, therefore all of the makkahs and all of the remarkable stories in Mitzrayim Eidim ne'emonim be'emunus habayre b'Torah kula. They are trustworthy witnesses to the existence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and of Torah, etc. Next paragraph. Ubavlo, ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu lo yaseh oisem ofis b'chol dar, ve'enei kol roshay kofar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to change the rules of nature in every generation. For every wicked person who denies him, Yitzave osanu, he therefore commanded us, Shenase tomid zichroin v'ois la'asher ro'inenu. It should be a memorial for us that our own eyes saw it, that our ancestors were there and they saw it. V'natik hadova el bonenu, and we should instill these messages in our children, u'bneim and their children to their children, u'bneim l'dor achron, and then to the end of generations. Therefore, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to do moifsim in every generation, not every time that you help the old person across the road, does a $20 bill come down and float down to your feet. Not every time that you speak Lashon Hara, you're going to get an electric zap on your tongue, because that takes away Bechira. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did a one-off huge sound and light show called Mitzrayim. And now, and he tells us to tell our children all about what happened. And we're very strict about it. And you don't do this sort of commemoration, this annual memorial that we'll see more than annual, then it's very strict. Because if you eat chometz on Pesach and you don't go through the process of remembering what happened, chiv kores. Or vazivas ha-Pesach, if you leave over from the korban Pesach, it's chiv kores. V'hatzorich shenichtav kol ma shenira eleinu ba'oises u'moifsim al yodeinu ve'ein beineinenu v'al beineinenu. The Azivas HaPesach is not necessarily chorus. Okay. V'hatzorich shekosov, but there's a very strict penalty if you leave over the korban Pesach. Shenichtav kol ma shenira eleinu ba'oises u'moifsim al yodeinu v'al beineinenu. And we've got to write down the whole story, and we put it on our arms and on our forehead. Tefillin, v'lichtav oisei al pischei abatim, and then we write it on the mezuzahs. Shenazki zeh b'fonenu b'boker b'erev, to remind ourselves every time we walk into and out of our home. K'moshe Omru emes v'yatziv deraisa, that there's a mitzvah saseh min HaTorah to remember Yetzias Mitzrayim once in the morning, once in the evening. That's what Sukkot is. We stand up, please God, on Friday night and we make Kiddush. Zecher L'Tzias Mitzrayim. Everything is Zecher L'Tzias Mitzrayim. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to repeat the miracles that took place in Mitzrayim, but what we need to do is to retell the story and to relive that event and to remind ourselves repeatedly about it. That's the key. Last paragraph. V'chein b'chol ki yetzi bohen. Mitzvahs Rabbah, Zeichel Mitzrayim. That's why so many mitzvahs are Zeichel Mitzrayim. V'hakol yeslonu b'chol hadoros edus b'moifsim shlei yishtaklu. We shouldn't forget the miracles of Mitzrayim. V'lo yeh pischein pen l'kofer, that the kofer shouldn't have an opening. L'hak cheshemunus ha'elikim, to deny the existence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki ha'koine mezuzah b'zuz echad, that someone buys a mezuzah for £1, for a few pounds, v'kava b'pischa, and he puts it on his door. V'nischaven b'inyono k'vahoide b'chidush ha'olam. That is testifying to the HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world of Yedias Habayir b'shkachosei, and he knows what's going on. V'gam b'nevuah, v'hemen b'chol pinas ha'Torah, and he therefore knows all aspects of Torah. Milvad shehodesh shechesed abarak moed al osir ritzonei. Aside from the fact that it's chesed for those who do His will. She'otzionu mi'osei avdus lecheres v'kavod gadol l'zchus ha'v'seim ha'chafetzim b'yirshema. Okay, Ad Kan, the Ramban, famous Ramban. Now, using that to answer our question, we can explain. All of the plagues, all of the 10 makkahs, were carried out by Malachim apart from the 10th plague. That's ani v'lei malach, ani v'lei mashchis, that it was me directly, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, Klal Yisrael are on a greater level than Malachim. Therefore, if the malach is commissioned to administer a certain makkah, then the Jewish people don't need protection from that. Imagine, you've got a story which is an apartment building which is 10 stories high. Imagine the malachim are on level 5 and they pour blue paint down the side of the building. Well, if you're on level 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, you're not affected by that. So therefore, when the malachim are administering the makkahs, I don't need protection because I'm on a higher level than them. So I don't need protection. But when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is administering the 10th makkah, Makas Bechoros himself, he's on floor not 10 or 12 or 15, but floor infinite. And therefore I need protection. Now, how do I get protection? If the best way of getting protection is by joining the winning side. How do I join the winning side? By becoming an Evet HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Korban Pesach is Avodah. Avodah is an Evet. That's what its name suggests. The root of Avodah is Evet. I become an Evet HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I join his team. And therefore, to start answering our questions. We might have thought that Moshe and Aaron have already proved their dedication. Yes, they're dedicated shluchim, going in and out of the palace of Paro. They're dedicated shluchim. But they also need a korban to become avodim. That's why Kain also. We need to be told that it's not good enough they're just shluchim. They need to become avodim, like us, to be part of this winning team. Question number 2 was, why is it that the 10th plague they needed protection? Because that was administered by Kodesh Baruch Hu himself. And therefore, he's on a high level, he's on floor infinite in the apartment building. But the Malachim, I'm on a higher level than them, I don't need protection from them. Question number 3, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why is Pesach so called? HaKadosh Baruch Hu passing over the homes of the Jewish people is a sign that this is a Jewish home. And a home, what does a Jewish home mean? It's an embassy of the residents of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It shows our identity. The king could come and stay in the residency whenever I want to. Often, where does the king stay? Or the prime minister or the president? He'll stay in the embassy of his country when he's visiting that country. So therefore, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu passing over a sign, this sign that it's a Jewish home, means that this home is an embassy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and because that demonstrates that we are the ambassadors of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It shows our identity. And therefore, that's exactly what Pesach is. Pesach is the birth of the Jewish people. By HaKadosh Baruch Hu jumping over the Jewish home, that says that I know this is a Jewish home, because that they have identified as a Jewish person. You know, on Seder night, Rabbi Hartman used to bless him in Eretz Yisrael. I don't know if he still does it here. But when you leave shul on the night of Seder, what do most people say? Good Yom Tov, enjoy Seder night, good Yom Tov. But he would go around and he would say to people, happy birthday, and people look at him like crazy. What do you mean happy birthday? This is the birthday of Klal Yisrael. This is when we became a nation. This is our birth. One time he said, he was wishing one after the other, happy birthday. And the guy said, how'd you know? Okay, he got lucky, right? But the point is, that is our birthday. That's why Pesach is so called. Because it's central to our identity that HaKadosh Baruch Hu passed over the Jewish home, because that was a sign that it is a Jewish home, an embassy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it displays our identity because we're ambassadors of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And lastly, what is the mezuzah? The mezuzah, it's not because of what's written inside the mezuzah, because it declares this is a Jewish home. And a home which is filled with Jewish values, with light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's an embassy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's why mezuzah is very much Zeichel Esiyas Mitzrayim, i.e. the whole concept of Mitzrayim. There is a Kadosh Baruch Hu, he knows what's going on in the world, he engages with the world, that's what it's all about. So 4 interesting questions and 4 very important answers. Why? To tell us that Moshe and Aaron did the Korban Pesach as well, because it's not good enough that they were good shluchim, they need also to be avodim, to identify as very much as part of the Jewish people, and also to get that protection. Why is it the 10th plague Dafka we need protection? Because the first 9 were administered by the representatives of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it were, and therefore we weren't affected by it. Masha'enke in the 10th was by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we needed that special protection. Why is the Yom Tov of Pesach so called? Like we've explained, because the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu jumped over the Jewish homes, that identifies that as a Jewish home, an embassy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that we are ambassadors of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore that is exactly what Pesach is all about, the creation of the nation. And lastly, why is it that the mezuzah? Because that's exactly the point. The mezuzah is included not because of what's written inside the mezuzah necessarily, but because it declares that this is the Jewish home, and that is the whole, which is filled with Jewish values and an embassy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore that is the whole purpose of Zeichel Atzias Mitzrayim. Okay, let's just finish with one. I know it is late. All right, Mitzvah Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us koach. We'll do this next year. Please God. Okay, we'll leave it there.